Turning to the Syrian conflict, an arms race may be brewing as the United States and Russia try to bring the Assad regime and opposition leaders together for peace talks. Joining us now, former Pentagon official, Fox News national security analyst, KT McFarland. General Jack Keane, retired four-star Army general, former Army chief of staff. He's also a Fox News military analyst, and it is great to have you both with us tonight. KT, let me start first. The spectacle, if you will, of a senior senator from Arizona going to Syria to talk about arming the rebels. Your reaction?
We do not belong in the middle of somebody else's civil war. It is a great tragedy. But before you talk about arming anybody, what's the objective? How are you going to achieve that objective? This is not going to be something that's easy or quick. And I think the story you had when you opened this broadcast, Chinese hackers, that's where we ought to be paying attention to. Syria is important, but the Chinese stealing trillions of dollars of American intellectual capital and defense capabilities is, to me, a far more serious problem.
That I'm confirmed in our lead tonight.
You indeed are.
Thank you so much. General, your thoughts on Syria as well?
Well, I completely disagree. If we never want to be involved in anybody's civil war, we never ever back any insurgencies or try to counter insurgencies, and we've done both of those, I think, largely for pretty good reasons. I mean, the fact of the matter is no less than Secretary of State Clinton and Director of the CIA Petraeus both believe that it's possible to arm the rebels, vetted groups, and still achieve some outcome. I don't believe it could be decisive now because time is on the side of Assad, and he clearly is on the move. And frankly, I believe this administration and others are paralyzed by the fear of adverse consequence. Therefore, the situation's hopeless and there's nothing we can do about it. Quite frankly, we can do something about it. And I also would take down Assad's airfields and take down lots of his missile systems. I wouldn't establish the no-fly zone yet. I don't think you need to do that. But what the tipping point here militarily, which would turn the tide if we want Assad to go, would be stop his air power from flying. Once that happens, momentum will shift rather quickly. Doesn't mean we know what the political outcome is going to be. We don't. And that's the reality of it. We do know what we get if Assad stays in power.
And the Syrian rebels setting a 24-hour deadline for Hezbollah to withdraw from its support of Assad. Is there a possibility that that deadline would be met?
No.
What is the U.S. interest?
No, look, Syria is now like the bar scene in the Star Wars movie. Every bad guy in the universe is there. There are over 1,000 rebel groups. The predominant ones, the most powerful of the ones, are tied to al-Qaeda. They're al-Qaeda affiliates. Any threat that anybody's making right now is not going to happen. I think these guys are in it to fight to the finish. And if I can just say for a minute from what General Keane, who I respect greatly what you have to say, General, but you know, when you say, I don't know what the political outcome is, haven't we just seen in Syria, you knock off a dictator and what do you have in his place? Chaos. You see in Egypt, pull the rug out from another dictator and what happens? Economic and political chaos. I'm not sure that this is a situation where we want to go in yet again and roll the dice and hope that, well, maybe it'll be better than what we have. Assad is a murderous thug. He will rot in hell. But the thought that we're going to now get involved in another war in the Middle East where we don't know what the political outcome is, I think that's short-sighted.
General, go ahead and respond to that, and then I've got a question to follow up if I may.
Well, I mean, it's not just about Assad. I mean, obviously, he's a brutal dictator. We do have revolutionary change sweeping through the Middle East. And the fact of the matter is it does prevent us some opportunities to influence outcomes, not to control them. And the military action I'm suggesting would be limited. And the reality is this is more about Iran than it is about Syria. This is our strategic enemy in the Middle East, and they're dead set on their geopolitical objectives to control that region. The Ark of Coalition of Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq is very real to them. They're all in. They have thousands of fighters on the ground providing advice. They had a two-star general of their Republican Guards force killed on the ground. That's how dead serious they are. They don't put forces in other countries to do anything. They use proxies. And the Hezbollah are very much involved in here for the same reasons. A lot of risk to the Hezbollah here because they're fighting jihadists as well. But nonetheless, you get a sense of how serious this is for our enemies in the region to prop up this Assad regime. It's not just about Assad. To me, it's about our geopolitical interests in the region.
And that geopolitical interest has to, of course, focus on our key ally in the region, and that is Israel. which is, first of all, alarmed to the point of making some very serious threats today if those S-300 Russian missiles are brought in. Secondly, the idea of the United States supporting forces, as you suggest, General. The Israelis are highly uncomfortable about that as well, as we have just reported, because of the involvement of various elements of radical Islamist groups. Your thoughts?
No mistake about it. Yeah, I totally agree with that premise. This is the #1 issue for the Israelis, is the transfer of weapon systems to the Hezbollah. Frankly, it would be very difficult to transfer S-300s, is what we're talking about here, to the Hezbollah. But nonetheless, there are chemical weapons there, and there are other issues.
Right.
It doesn't make the reality of the S-300 any less real. That is a sophisticated system. And certainly in the hands of the Syrians, it can do some real damage. But the fact of the matter is, it's a defense system it's well within the United States' capability to defeat, but few other countries could defeat it.
I'm going to turn, if I may, very quickly to the issue you raised. I want to understand why now. We have known that the Chinese are carrying out with their front companies and their cyber attacks assaults on U.S. Intellectual capital, whether it is under the control of our military or whether it's under the control of the private sector, for literally 2 decades. Why now? Why is this information leaked, released? How did suddenly the Washington Post get its hands on this? To what end, what purpose of this administration?
I think it's reaching a critical mass, that it's now to the point where every one of our major weapon systems seems to be hacked. In the case of the F-35 fighter, they found out, they hacked into, they got the information, they put one out on the assembly line and put it out on the tarmac before we could. And so I think you're seeing a lot more of it, again, because it's reaching critical mass.
General, you get the last word here. Your thoughts on that issue?
Well, I think we got to take the gloves off here with China. I mean, the private security company that exposed this a number of weeks ago could have exposed 20 different attacks. They actually had the pictures of the people who were doing it. That's how much we know, and that's a private security company. Listen, we know what the Chinese are doing. We steal their intelligence. They steal our technology and intelligence. We have got to expose them for what they're doing, and we're unwilling to do that, quite frankly. And until this administration is willing to do that, they're going to keep on coming. And the fact of the matter is, they do not want public exposure. They believe they have deniability because it's cyber. You don't know who the hackers are. Put it out publicly who the hackers are, or at least tell the Chinese, look, we're going to totally expose you unless you change your behavior. And here's what we could give to the world public at large if you don't curb your behavior. And I think then we'd finally start to make some progress with these guys.
General, thank you very much. General Jack King, KT McFarland, thank you very much, KT.